Dave's drinking something with cumin? Yes, I am. Stay tuned. This is Beer in Front, part of the Beer Media Group. Every week I'll talk to people in and around the beer world and get their stories all about beer. That's Beer in Front, and it's coming up now. Welcome to episode 261 of Beer in Front. I'm your host, Dave Zalatoris, and Beer in Front is a charter member of the Beer Media Group. I have a different show this week. I talked to Benno Nelson. He's the co-founder of Corners Beverage Company right here in Chicago. Talked about his great company, and we drank their salted lemonade. And yes, this has cumin in it, and it's delicious. So stay tuned for that. That was a lot of fun learning about him, his company. I'm really excited to see what they're going to come out with in the future. Also, later on in the show, I'm going to make a mocktail with this salted lemonade that they have from Five Corners. So I'll make the mocktail, talk about that. Then I'm also going to do, as my Beer in Front, a non-alcoholic beer, because if you listen to the interview, both Benno and his wife do not drink. So I am not going to have an alcoholic beverage on the show. I'm going to have a non-alcoholic beer from Untitled Art. So I'm looking forward to having that. All that and much more coming up on this episode of Beer in Front. In beer and beverage news, Moore's Brewing Company is the 2025 winner of the Samuel Adams Brewing the American Dream. Moore's joins another great Chicago brewery, Funky Town, as recipients of this fantastic award. Congratulations to Moore's. Odell Brewing out of Fort Collins, Colorado, they're coming out with a non-alcoholic beer. This is going to be called Batch 1 IPA. Look for that on a shelf near you, but I'm excited to try that one from Odell. Lake Effect Brewing in Chicago is finally open. They've opened up their new tap room on Thursday the 12th. So this looks cool from the pictures. Haven't had a chance to go there yet, but this does look really cool. So if you're in the Chicago area, you need to check out Lake Effect Brewing Company. I saw an ad for some new product for brewers to have extra flavor to their beer, and this is called Flava Malt. Now, they have a bunch of different flavors. They have like a chocolate, raspberry, mango, pineapple, lemon, all this, and some others coming out. Now, from what I'm reading on their website, and this isn't for home, maybe it is for home brewers too, but for large brewers, you add this Flava Malt to the fermenter during the fermentation process, along with any dry hops, and this will provide those types of flavors to your beer. So I'm not sure about that. It looks like, just from the picture, it's more of like a powder-like substance. So I don't know. It's allegedly natural, improved aroma, more efficient. So we'll see if anyone's going to be using Flava Malt. Tilray, which is now the owner of iconic brewery Red Hook in Seattle, they're closing the Red Hook Brew Lab in the Capitol Hill neighborhood of Seattle. Now, this isn't like their original brewery. This was something that opened up in like 2017, I believe. But Red Hook has a special place in my heart. It was one of the first craft breweries and craft beers that you could get here in the Chicago area in the mid-90s. And I remember taking a tour there back in 97. And I remember before, Starbucks was Starbucks, Red Hook had a stout that was brewed with this Starbucks coffee in this stout, and it was really good. And once Starbucks became this behemoth, they stopped using that. But I do like Red Hook. I wish I could have their ESB again. But yeah, they're closing the Brew Lab in Seattle. Old Irving and Journeyman Distillery have collaborated. They have a new 7-year aged high rye. This is 60% corn, 40% rye, with, according to the release, buttery caramel and cherry on the nose and a touch of rich cured tobacco on the palate. Now, according to Old Irving, what they posted on Instagram, they have about 170 bottles that you could purchase there, or you could just have yourself a nice little drink. So I'm definitely going to head over to Old Irving and check out this collaboration with Journeyman Distillery. And finally, I mentioned a couple weeks ago that Voodoo Ranger is teaming up with Malort. That's right, you heard it, Malort. So it's gonna be called Roulette IPA. And I will give, not a huge fan of Voodoo Ranger. I've talked about it here before, but they're selling a ton of beer, so God bless them. But this is actually pretty cool marketing. So they're gonna have this in 6 packs of 12-ounce cans. And all the 6 cans are going to have the same label, but 4 of them are going to be their Juicy Haze IPA, and 2 cans are going to be the Malort inspired IPA that says it has its signature bitter wormwood flavor. So I don't know if this is made with real Malort. They have the Malort bottle and the font and everything, so it's done in collaboration with them, but the beer doesn't say it actually has Malort in it. Now, another thing that I thought was weird was that it's only going to be available in Fort Collins. And it says limited quantities of this are going to be available in Fort Collins. And like, Chicago's the Malort capital of the world, but they're going to have in the next like couple of weeks a few different like events. So there's going to be one at the Empty Bottle here in Chicago, the G-Man Tavern across from Wrigley Field, and at the House of Blues. So if you're interested in a Malort Voodoo Ranger collaboration, check that out. Five Corners Beverage Company is a local Chicago-based company that has one of the most unique tasting beverages I've had. They are a husband and wife team making small batch products right here in the Midwest. I sampled their salted lemonade over at Bottles and Cans a couple weeks ago, and I just had to buy it right there on the spot. I'm so happy to welcome Benno Nelson, the co-founder of Five Corners today. Benno, thanks so much for taking time out to chat about Five Corners.
Oh my gosh, Dave, thank you so much for having me. Super excited to get to talk.
I would think, and it's just my own weird mind, that when people are starting out a beverage company, they're just going to make wild cherry or, blue raspberry, slap a nice label on it, throw some marketing buzzwords and call it a day. But you and your wife said, no, we're going to add cumin to this. How did you come up with the idea for Five Corners?
Man, thank you so much for asking. Yeah, I mean, so the long version, and I'll trust you to trim it all up whenever you need to, is like, I stopped drinking alcohol just shy of 7 years ago. And the world of what's available for adults without alcohol has changed dramatically in that 7 years. And it's fun to have had like a front row seat to that. And over that period of time, my wife also decided to stop drinking. We've had a bunch of kids and she was just valuing her sleep and healthy lifestyle and stuff like that more and more. And so the two of us both have sort of come for different reasons to this space where we're not drinking alcohol anymore. And as we looked around at what was available, you're right. There's a lot of stuff that I would say like skews sweet, and a huge amount of options for folks that want a delicious sweet drink. And then increasingly, there's a bunch of really exciting non-alcoholic, sort of de-alcoholized versions of alcoholic drinks that you know and love, right? Wine, beer, those technologies and those techniques have improved so much, and the varieties are so incredible these days. And same thing with cocktails, non-alc Negronis and old fashions and mojitos and stuff like that are increasingly becoming available. What we found was still missing was this idea of like, what do people drink when they're not drinking? And actually uncovering this delicious history of non-alcoholic beverages from around the world that have complex, amazing palates, but don't have alcohol in them. So we're not taking anything out. We don't have to pretend that the drink is something that it's not. We just get to celebrate these incredible flavors from around the world. And so our, as you mentioned, our first one is this salted lemonade, which is directly inspired by nimbu pani or shikanji, a drink from India that is super delicious and is centuries old and has as many different variations as any recipe that's been passed down and interpreted by billions of people. And so ours is very much a take on that. We and to your point, like, we made a point of sort of cutting down on the sugar, and we added carbonation, things that we thought would contribute to the sense of like slowing down the drinking experience and being more like a cocktail in that sense where you want to sip on it. It doesn't taste like juice. It doesn't taste like a pop. It's something that you want to kind of, yeah, sip slowly.
I grew up near Irving Park, Milwaukee, and Cicero, so I'm very familiar with Six Corners. How did you come about with the name Five Corners for the beverage company?
Yeah, thanks, man. Yeah, I mean, for us, it's this idea of crafting drinks that use all 5 tastes, so salty, sour, savory, bitter, and sweet, and that hail from what we call the 5 corners of the globe, so north, south, east, west, and right here at home. And I think it's fun that, like, Chicago does have this sort of, these 6 corners, a couple of different of these spots that sort of identify as 6 corners, and we actually live right by, Lincoln and, Wellington and Southport, another sort of 6 corner vibe. And so I think that kind of like reference point is nice, and we want to make sure that the sort of Chicago component of it lives. But that's those are the 5 corners.
Well, the Five Corners you were mentioning about, like food wise, were both you and your wife always foodies, always into food, or has your palates evolved as you gotten older?
Yeah, for me, for sure, like, I was an incredibly picky growing up, and even, like, to the extent that, like, my mom is a great cook, and my dad worked in kitchens in the '70s, and, like, it made them completely bananas that I would only eat, like, white rice and plain tofu and stuff like that, and so but as I've gotten older, I've definitely, like, I think almost because of that I was picky, I started cooking. So if I was at a friend's house, I couldn't have pizza, but I would make something for myself to eat and stuff like that. Like I didn't eat cheese growing up and all this different stuff. And so I've developed a real interest in food and love that stuff. And the same is true for my wife. What we say at the company is that like your palate is progressive. And, in the context of beverage, we think, most adults in the United States who are choosing, for whatever reason, a non alcoholic beverage at any given time, they have exposure to alcoholic beverages too, right? They've had, if they're drinking a Coke, they've also had a rum and Coke, or they've had an old fashioned, they've had a IPA, that bitterness and all that stuff. And so what we're trying to celebrate is that like, as your palate develops, you keep seeking out kind of new fun stuff to try and complex things. And that doesn't stop when you're taking a break from alcohol or when you're, eliminating alcohol from your life for whatever reason. And so we want to continue to reward that spirit of discovery.
Funny you mentioned being a picky eater. I was the same way, and I'm half Sicilian. And growing up, like I wouldn't eat sauce. So my mother and my grandmother would make, big pot of sauce for Sunday dinner, and I had to have butter on it. And then
Oh
I don't
my
know, maybe
gosh.
when I became a teenager, I finally discovered, like, oh, wow, this is really good.
Oh yeah. I mean, I had this very distinct memory of being like, trying guacamole for the first time and being like, I am a fool. This is so good. And it just looked green to me. And no one could convince me to try it. And I finally tried it. I was like, oh, what have I done? And,
Yeah.
I still that's my biggest regret in my life is that there were, like 18 years of guacamole that I didn't enjoy.
I'm gonna open up the can of the salted
Oh,
lemonade right
great.
now and have it. So this is citrus, black salt, and cumin. Once again, it's non-alcoholic. It's a sparkling cocktail. You could pick this up in 8.4-ounce cans. So I always have to have the can open sound.
Beautiful.
So I might put out some of the video, but you could tell I'm holding it up here. It's not like a crystal clear beverage, but it looks nice. Almost just looks like a regular lemonade with bubbles. For me, I get the cumin right off the nose. That's the one thing that just slaps me right up front. I don't get any other scents with just my nose, but the cumin. But I mean, it smells really good. Yeah, I mean, I love this. This is so good.
Thanks so
And
much.
I put a video out the day that I ran into you at Bottles and Cans. So I'm like,
Yeah.
oh, let me throw this in the fridge real quick. And I forgot because, you're at a tasting event and you get the little 1 or 2 ounce samples. I didn't get the heat.
Oh,
But when I
yeah.
had it at home, I'm like, oh, look at this. So yeah, I love the flavor. I love the after effect of this. I mean, this is just such a good beverage on its own.
Ah, Dave, thank you so much. Yeah, yeah, we really thought a lot about like how, what is special about beverage alcohol and those experiences, right? And like I do think, for me there's sort of two pieces to that. One is, we say that the best of beverage alcohol, right? It has a depth of flavor, a diversity of palate, and a domain, like a sense of place, right? Like kind of people, even sort of casual drinkers can tell the difference between a Scottish whiskey and an Irish whiskey sometimes, right? And know why those things are different. I think that's remarkable. These like stories that we know and share about these beverages and their history and stuff. And so we were definitely looking for drinks that had that. And then when you think about, drinking like a glass of wine, it has like a bouquet up front that you're smelling. It has a mouth feel as it sort of goes down, and then it has, those tannins that linger or kick. And so as we were building the salted lemonade, we wanted to sort of have that same adventure. And definitely like you crack it open and I like to pour it in a glass like you just did. And you get that sort of bouquet of cumin up front that, the effervescence helps carry that. And then yeah, the all those different pieces. So it's nice
Yeah.
to hear you kind of repeat them back because we that's exactly what we were trying to do.
Now, I'm not familiar with the original beverage that
Yeah.
this is based on. How similar is that to the traditional beverage you would find?
Yeah, really similar. Honestly, now there's a couple of interesting components. One is like the lemons in India are a little bit different than the lemons that we are accustomed to getting in the United States. And so we did a little bit of a balance between like lemon and lime. That sort of I liked that sort of little bit of bitterness more that you get with the lime and that kind of dance back and forth. And so that's one thing that we tried to spend some time on. The exact spice blend, like if you Googled recipes for shikanji or for nimbu pani, like you would see a lot of different, thinking about the different spice blends that you could use. But I would say like the two biggest things are carbonating it is not traditional. So that was something that was important to us about all our beverages and sort of our as we think to the future of our sort of like extended line of beverages, carbonation is a component that matters to us. And the other one is cutting down on the sugar. So you can find, if you were to get a nimbu pani in like a restaurant, it may have as much sugar in it as like an American style lemonade as well. And we were sort of deliberate about trying to cut down on that, let those other flavors kind of really, really sing.
Yeah, now you mentioned the carbonation. This is very lightly carbonated. So if you're listening at home and you're picturing this to be like a sparkling water or a soda pop, it's definitely nowhere near the carbonation level of those. But this is just like a nice balance. It definitely brings everything out, especially in the aroma, or you're getting all of that.
Yeah, like hearing the fizz when you poured it in the cup, that made me feel good.
Now, do you see the salted lemonade as more of a standalone beverage, or is this something that people would be able to mix in a mocktail or even a cocktail if that's a road someone wanted to go down?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, my honest answer, Dave, is like we wanted to build it in such a way that it could stand on its own and be its own thing. And so that's why we call it a cocktail as opposed to calling it like a mixer or whatever. But the reality is we're so excited about the creativity of people and drinkers and bartenders, and being a part of the conversation is really thrilling for us. And so we like within weeks of getting it out there, we were starting to hear from people of like either, oh, I love putting a little bit of this non-alcoholic spirit in, or a THC spirit in it, or oh, we love putting a little mezcal in, or tequila, or vodka, or whatever. And that's great. Like one of the things that I think about in the context of creating the beverage is this. I just the idea of inclusiveness. Like my non-scientific study data tells me that like at this point, it feels like if you're in a group of like 6 adults, like one of them for some reason that night or at some point throughout the night is going to be reaching for something that doesn't have alcohol in it. It's just becoming so much more common for people to talk about that, or to be open about it, or to be interested in that in some way. And what we want is for in those moments of celebration for that person to not have to just have a glass of water, right? To be able to have something that feels like a celebration. And so the idea that you could bring a couple of 4 packs to a party and someone's throwing in a shot of tequila and someone's throwing in a THC spirit and someone's drinking it straight up and everyone's invited and everyone's celebrating, like that's what we want. And so it's super fun to hear. Actually we're available up in Rogers Park at Rogers Park Provisions and Rogers Park Social, and they released a video once of mixing it with Koval cranberry. And
Oh, okay.
I love it. It's just
Yeah.
so fun to hear what people are doing, and we're always curious to learn, what we're not thinking of.
Now, everything here is all natural. If anyone has a dietary restriction, is there any concerns that they should have about this?
No, I mean, I'll say 2 things. There is in the context of salted lemonade, there is sugar. It's sweetened with real cane sugar. But I think if you're really trying to avoid it, our other drinks, as we're planning them today, have less. But this one does have real cane sugar. That's one thing that I throw out there. But other than that, like, there's no allergens there's no allergens in it that we're aware of. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That kind of thing.
So yeah, it's like no lactose, no, gluten, nothing like that. If anyone
Right.
is, yeah,
Right. And I think the neat thing is that we can have a complete label. Like we can put everything that's
yeah.
in it on the label because there's no secrets, nothing we're trying to hide or anything like that. And so I think that's the thing that people have responded to. It's just like if you're worried about it, you can really just read it and see everything. We're not trying to pull the wool over anyone's eyes.
It's interesting as this is warming up a bit. And I had the can out for maybe about 15 minutes before we started recording.
Okay.
In the first can, when I got home from bottles and cans, I had to take a picture of it. I threw one in the freezer for like 45 minutes just because I wanted to do a quick video. So this is a little warmer and I'm getting more of the citrus with the taste than I did when it was ice cold. So
Oh, interesting.
it's interesting as it warms up in your glass, you're getting more complexities of the flavor, and it's just as good warmed up as it is, super ice cold.
That's great to hear. Yeah,
Mhm.
that's awesome. Yeah, and we definitely have like my father-in-law is a big supporter and loves the drink, and he loves putting it on ice. And he says a similar thing. It's kind of like he likes how the drink changes as like a little bit of the ice melts. It dilutes a little bit. It sort of starts off sort of sharply cold, and so I think that's fun to hear too.
Now, it's interesting because, when I met you over at Bottles and Cans, I grabbed it thinking my wife was going to love this. And she actually was not a fan as much as she likes cumin. She's like, I don't know if I want to drink it.
Uh-huh.
So this, could be polarizing to some. Were you and your wife, were you concerned putting something out right out of the gate that maybe everyone's not going to enjoy?
You know what? The honest answer, Dave, is no. I think like a little bit from my perspective, like trying to make something for everybody, you can often end up making something for nobody. And I think it helps sometimes just like have a really clear sense of who something is for, or what you're building. And so we do have this idea that like the person that we think is going to really love it is a person who is looking for something that doesn't have alcohol today and wants something that's not too sweet and is excited to try something new or to sort of explore the world in a can and sort of get that sort of have that experience. And so, yeah, I think definitely, like, and cumin, just for what it's worth, cumin is also polarizing, right? Like, I remember growing up, like, my mother would call it, like, the armpit spice. You know what I mean? And just to be honest, like, and then literally I sampled it to a person once who was like, "I love this, and I literally have a shirt at home that just has the word cumin on it." And it's like, "Oh,
Okay.
okay, great. Well, like,
Yeah.
and the thing that's funny too, Dave, is like when I think of the drink, I think a lot of its point of reference, right? Which is very explicitly Nimbu Pani. And like, but what I've also sort of learned and sort of reflected on as sampling this drink and drinking it and sort of trying it with different cuisines and stuff like that as we drink it at home is that, Mexican food and Latin American food also has this combination of citrus and cumin. And also Mediterranean food has this combination of citrus and cumin. And Chinese food has cumin. And I've learned that, like, in ancient Greece, they would have cumin on their tables, like we have salt and pepper. And so, like, this idea that it can be sort of both specific and universal turns out to be more true than I even imagined. And the last thing that I would say on that is, like, if you had told any of us 10 years ago that peanut butter whiskey was gonna be $1 million business, we all would have laughed in your face. And meanwhile, Screwball is huge now, right? And now there's banana peanut butter whiskeys and everything else. And so I just think that, like, it's, we know it's not for everyone, and that's totally okay. But we are excited that it's for someone.
I know I saw you post something on social media. Was it last week that you had your first one-star review?
Yeah, yeah, totally, and like, it's and that's we have that experience at tastings too, right? Like, we'll pour it for people, and someone will really love it, and someone will say, "Oh, this, like, oh, my mom would love this. Like, this is just like, this reminds me of Nibupani." Or someone will say, like, "Oh, I never had anything like this. This is so interesting." And some people will try and be like, this is, like, a funny one that I said the other day as I was doing my little spiel about, like, "Oh, we wanted it to have sort of complex, like, adult palate." And she, like, took a sip of it and she was like, "This is too adult for me." She's just, like, set the cup down. I was like, "Look, that's great." People are
Yeah.
trying it, and yeah, I think it's the good news is nothing really is for everyone. And so I think we wanted to go big on flavor and celebration.
We were talking earlier now, you're focusing right now just on the Chicagoland area
Mhm.
for distribution. Like,
Mhm.
why did you just decide to focus, hyper local for now?
Yeah, I mean, one reason is, we're bootstrapped. We're just ourselves doing this business. And to be totally honest, like, my wife has a full-time job. That's why it's only me talking to you right now. And so I'm doing this, and so we were trying to think about, like, well, what is our list of sort of assets? And one of them is that, we live within a 1 hour's drive of, like, 10 million people. And that's pretty special. And so our goal is not to become the next Pepsi. We would way rather be the next, New Glarus, and have a dedicated local market. And I think, it's funny when you think about, we sort of live in these two worlds of sort of beverage alcohol and microbreweries and, like, that kind of stuff. And then also this world of, quote unquote, consumer packaged goods, or CPG and stuff. And there's all this thinking that, oh, if you're making a CPG brand, it needs to be huge and national, and you have to be in Costco and all this stuff, and it takes all this money. But on the other hand, there's this business model that really works, that is like the beloved local brewery. It's not easy. It's a grind. It's super hard. And maybe you know what I mean? There's all the dynamics that brewers have been facing. I don't mean to trivialize those challenges in any way, but I do think, like, that's a lovely alternative to this capital intensive, grow at all costs, sort of approach. And one thing that being local allows us to do is is to control costs in a really powerful way. And so some of our competition is the wrong word, but, other non-alc brands are expensive. And it's a thing that, there was a recent article in the Wall Street Journal, I think, about, the price of a quote unquote mocktail, or these different things. And by staying focused on the Chicagoland market, we can limit costs in a way that we can offer our product at what we think is a much more reasonable price than some alternatives today.
Now, if somebody, listening or watching this somewhere else, do you offer a direct to consumer option? If someone went to your website, could they order it?
We do, yeah, we do, we
Okay.
do. It's a little bit of a high it's like in order for it to make sense with, like, the shipping costs and stuff, it's a high point of entry. It's a 12 pack, but we do, and we love shipping it around the country. We're able to do that and give people an opportunity to try it. Yeah, if you're in Chicagoland, we'd love to drive you to any of the retailers that have taken a chance on a local product and are offering it for you there so that they can feel the love.
Where are some of the local retailers? We mentioned bottles and cans, but
Yeah.
where else? You mentioned a few places in Rogers Park. Where else can people pick up the salted lemonade from Five Corners?
Yeah, right now we're in about 40 different locations in and around the city of Chicago. All of them are on our website for sure. You can see a map of all of them available, and we're always posting new ones on our Instagram feed as well. We're in a couple of restaurants and stuff like that now, so we're available in the Whistler, in Logan Square, Maria's in Bridgeport. We're available in a couple of like performance venues, which we think is a really fun place where people,
Oh,
are
cool.
looking to celebrate. So, book club in Lakeview, or the Old Town School of Folk Music up in Lincoln Square, the Davis Theater up in Lincoln Square at Sojourn. So that's a couple, and then yeah, we're in Bitter Pops in Lakeview, Bottles Up, and Tato's Market in the South Loop. So yeah, we're really it's been really lovely seeing the response of local retailers that we really admire and respect. We live very close to Bitter Pops, and I remember telling my son before we started the company, I was like, "Man, if we're in Bitter Pops one day, like we'll know that we really made it." Well, Bitter Pops turned out to be like the fifth place that carried us, and it was just so generous, the extent to which we feel kind of supported and embraced by just the local business community has been so cool. The other thing to call out is there's a couple of non-alc focused bottle shops. And so if your listeners are in the Chicago area are interested in learning more about non-alc options, in addition to the ones that we've mentioned, In Good Spirits in Westtown on Ashland and Solar Intentions up in Edgewater are two
Okay.
spaces that are totally focused on non-alc options and have really great vibes and curation and super friendly proprietors that will help sort of talk you through what you might be interested in.
When we were emailing earlier, Benno, you mentioned that you have a couple new flavors that are going to possibly be coming out or hopefully, come out later this year. Care to share anything about the two new flavors?
I think we're in a place where we're confident enough about it that we don't mind talking about it. So yeah, thanks for asking, Dave. I think the second one, which we should be going into production in soon, and hopefully we'll have before the end of the summer, is Sangrita. So it's inspired by the traditional accompaniment to a pour of tequila. It's got citrus, chili powder, and then a little umami with like tomato, little Worcestershire, and so that's a really nice one. It's also sparkling, which is non-traditional for sure, and so it drinks a little bit like a michelada without the beer, or a
Okay.
little bit of a sort of spicy Bloody Mary vibe. So that's our second one, and then our third one will be a sparkling pickleback. And so
All
that will
right.
also hopefully come before the end of the year. Yeah. So, and we think like, as we're able to add additional flavors like this, I think it makes it a little bit more clear sort of what we're doing and sort of how we're finding these different beverages and sort of the way that we're approaching them, cutting down that sweetness, allowing that carbonation to help sort of slow down that sipping experience and really going for these strong flavors that stand on their own.
Now, in addition to the beverages, on your website, you have some cool merch. And do you make the Cumin Being t-shirt in big boy sizes like a double X? Because if so, I need to place an order for one of those shirts.
Absolutely, David. I've got you covered. I've got you covered. Let me know. Let me know how I can get it to you, and you've got one on the way for sure. For
Oh,
sure.
awesome.
Yeah.
Well, Benno, I really appreciate this. Once again, you got to check them out, fivecornersbev.com. I'll include the link in the show notes. Like, if you're not in the Chicago area, I would definitely order some. I think you're going to like it. If you like cumin, I think you'll like it. But then again, my wife likes cumin. but just take my word on it and order a 12-pack of the salted lemonade. If you're in Chicago, you could go to their website, find the places near you where you could pick this up. Like I know, like me, I could walk to Bottles and Cans, so I just walked
It's the
over
best.
there, and I was actually there yesterday and saw they still have plenty of it right there. So you could go to Bottles and Cans and pick you up some salted lemonade from Five Corners.
Great.
Benno, I appreciate it so much. It was great to talk to you. I love this drink. I have one can left, so I'll definitely need to head over to Bottles and Cans and grab some more of it.
Amazing, Dave. Thank you so much for the time. I'm so absolutely thrilled that you enjoy the drink, and it's a real treat to talk to you. So thanks so much for the time, Dave.
So I have some Ritual non-alcoholic gin, got a ice cube in my glass. So let's try a mocktail, if you will. That's pretty nice. Now, when Benno and I were talking, like I mentioned, like the first thing that hit me with the aroma was the cumin. And now adding the Ritual, NA gin, I do get more of the lemon from this out of the aroma. So let's see what it tastes like. That's good. Like, I still get the heat. I'm not used to that. But the gin, I think, brings out more of the lemon in here. And then you get that cumin towards the back. I think this is pretty good. Absolutely. Killer. Put this one in the cart all day long. I like it. I like the flavor. I do like that it brings out the citrus a little bit more. It balances the cumin. So I like this. This is a winning combination right here. So if you have some NA gin from Ritual Zero Proof, they make other NA, they have an aperitif. I think they have a whiskey. I tried the whiskey. I'm not a fan. But the gin I thought was pretty decent. So grab yourself some salted lemonade from Five Corners, get you some NA gin, make a cocktail, put it in the cart. All right, the beer that's in front of me now is a non-alcoholic beer from Untitled Art. This is their West Coast IPA. After talking to Benno, he was mentioning that both him and his wife do not drink alcohol, so I figured I don't want to come here and talk about a beer on the show afterwards and have some 15% barrel age. So I'm going NA for the episode. I've heard good things about Untitled Art and their NA stuff. So let's crack open this West Coast IPA. Looks good. It has a nice, good color, good carbonation and foam here. I do get the hops. Now, I'm going to have to take a sip before I elaborate on what I think I'm smelling here. So let's have a sip of this. It's not bad. I almost get, if you're a home brewer, you know the smell of like raw hops. That was what I was getting from the aroma and a little bit from the flavor. I mean, it's not bad. I'm definitely going to finish this. I think there are other non-alcoholic versions of the style that are out there that do a better job. So while this is good, I've had better. Let me have one more sip and see. Maybe it's me. Yeah, there's just something there that I can't tell you to put this one in the cart. I mean, it's a decent beer. Like I said, I'm not dumping it. It's better than some other NAs that I've had from bigger companies. So this is not a horrible beer, but I think there's better ones out there if you're looking for more of a non-alcoholic IPA. So if you see this from Untitled Art, they've got a great reputation. So don't listen to me. I'm just a clown. But I don't know if I'd put this one in the cart again. All right, that's going to wrap things up for this edition of Beer in Front. I thank you very much for listening. Once again, I want to thank Benno Nelson. He's the co-owner of Five Corners Beverage Company. If you see their salted lemonade, by all means, you got to check that out. Next week's show, I've got a couple good guests lined up, and we're going to talk about the stovepipe cans. So stay tuned for that next week. Until then, have a great week. And remember, sometimes the beer in front of you is the best one yet.